If you grew up in the 2000s, you probably remember when games felt cooler. When midnight releases could shut down Times Square. When everything had attitude. It wasn't an accident, and it isn't just nostalgia. They had something in common that modern titles lost. There was a formula that made these games legendary. A secret sauce. They all used the same 5 ingredients, and the first was style. Remember when skateboarding games weren't afraid to look like skateboarding games? It's no secret that a lot of modern releases feel art directionless, almost like they're afraid to have their own personality or even stay consistent with their old one. There was a time when you could identify a game just by looking at the water. Now everyone renders it through the same engine. The point is, certain studios have turned decades of progress and billions of dollars into uglier games, and the most heinous is Pokemon. Every few years they make a new one, and with it comes an onslaught of criticism. This is especially true for Legend ZA, which has been compared to and completely mocked by Sonic the Hedgehog for the PlayStation 3. Most point to the flat PNGs duct taped to the side of buildings, and the city's repetitive layout. It gets even more complicated when you remember that's the only location in the game. That's right, the hunt begins and ends in government-sanctioned wild zones. They already do this in real life. We've even got PvP battle zones at shopping centers and train stations. Pokemon has never been known for its graphics, but there's clearly something going on here. Comparatively, their best titles from the 2000s were simple but cohesive. Everything from the environments to the sprites was vibrant and heavily stylized. More importantly, the simplicity made sense. The games looked complete within the limits of their hardware because the art direction embraced those limits. On the other hand, the art direction for the new games isn't consistent or polished enough to be passable within the medium. 3D has a much higher ceiling and expectations are still through the roof. They've ended up in this awkward limbo where they're taking the worst from both worlds. The Pokemon are dulled down to look more realistic, but they still freeze and dissolve instead of flying away. I feel like it'd be infinitely better to pick a lane and stick to it, even at the cost of realism. That being said, the game is surprisingly fun. And I'll say the same for the new Skate title, which has faced even more outrage online. When the original dropped in 2007, it presented skateboarding through a gritty documentary-style lens. They wanted the games to feel like a street part filmed with a shaky handheld camera. Sure enough, combined with the presence of real-life pros and a grounded storyline, it captured skateboarding culture in a way that its competitors couldn't. The next 2 titles kept this identity alive, or at least occasionally alluded to it. They knew what they were and they did it well. However, in 2025, we got this. Sanitized, corporate, devoid of almost any references to skateboarding culture. Of course, there's an item shop, and if you pay $70 for the Founders version, you get 3 in-game t-shirts. I've bought more in real life for less money. I'm sure you're sick of hearing about the Fortnite effect, but it really looks like Fortnite. The worst thing is, it's painfully obvious why they did this. By abandoning the aesthetics and cultural references of the originals, they appeal to a much broader audience. You don't need any prior knowledge to get it. And that's fine, the game is a lot of fun, and it's nice to see more people involved, but it'll never be cool. At least not in the same way as the earlier entries. Getting a more realistic peek into skateboarding was intriguing, especially if you didn't understand it. They didn't feel soulless because they chose a style and committed to it unapologetically. This certainly has a style, but it's got fuck all to do with a game called Skate and everything to do with a game called Money. Anyway, style alone doesn't explain why older games felt cooler. There's something studios always miss when remastering games from the 2000s. The atmosphere. It's easily the most important ingredient, and I'll tell you why. For me, it all starts with the environments. In the 2000s, every second title had jungles and temples, tropical beaches, an obligatory snow map with penguins. It placed a focus on exploration and adventure, which was reflected in the heavy hitters at the time. Games like Tomb Raider, Halo, and Far Cry all had you trudging through dense tropical jungles and ruins. But it wasn't just the types of locations that made the atmosphere so strong. It was the variety. Believe it or not, Halo used to have more than one biome. In 3, you were taken through deserts, rainforests, alien ships overrun by the flood. By the end of the game, you really feel like you've gone on a journey, a great journey even. This might be a weird take, but despite its linear structure, it actually feels more open to me than an open world game. With Halo Infinite, you're free to explore everything, but if you just turn around, you'll realize you've already seen it. The scale is smaller. On the other hand, giving us snapshots of diverse biomes and environments makes it feel like we're simply getting glimpses into a much larger universe. The war doesn't just start and end when you log in, but where Halo made war feel endless, Call of Duty made it feel immediate. The earlier titles had an unmistakable atmosphere that left a permanent mark on gaming history. I don't care about how they fumbled it, I think that's pretty clear by now, but I do want to know how they built it to begin with. What made mere menu screens so iconic and missions so memorable? Well, let's go back to 2008. World at War releases as the 5th installment in the franchise. Again, it's set during World War II, only this time you're fighting through the Pacific Theater and Eastern Front. They just happen to be two of the most brutal and dehumanizing battlegrounds of the war. The game immediately reminds you of this, setting a tone that remains for the entire story. You burn down villages, crawl through jungles, wake up in a pile of bodies being picked apart by crows. The atmosphere is dramatic and desperate, and the game fully commits to this. The tone isn't broken by colorful pop-ups, ads, or menus trying to funnel you into their battle royale mode. Like, this is the start screen. It tells you exactly what you're in for, and if you still don't get it, the music does the rest. It's not epic and heroic, it's bleak and haunting. And that's before you translate it. This consistency is why many people credit World at War with the darkest atmosphere in the franchise. And it's exactly what the modern titles are missing. Atmosphere also comes from aesthetics though, and there's a few that defined the era. If you played a lot of PS2 games, you likely remember horror grunge. Coined by Evan Collins, the term describes a graphic design style that was popular from the late 90s to the early 2000s. Look at Siren, Postal, Fatal Frame, or even Resident Evil. They combined grungy elements and textures with rust orange highlights to create chaotic and disturbing visuals. Again, this was consistent across everything, from the cover art to the menu screens. At no point are you taken out of the experience. The aesthetic was cool because it was almost comically edgy. Things looked a little dirty, diseased. It wasn't trying to be subtle. And neither was the Biohazard green aesthetic. Out of all the console giants in the 2000s, Xbox couldn't have picked a better color. The world was obsessed with this radioactive palette, and it's since become synonymous with the era. Mountain Dew, the Xbox loading screen, limited edition Halo console from 2002. You see this green obsession all over older Brother Core edits, where they show old tech, clothing, and energy drinks. I don't know why it was so popular, but as always, it probably had something to do with The Matrix. Its use of neon green to represent hacking and futuristic tech was emblematic of what the decade considered cool. Add a layer of glowing toxic sludge and things get even better. Overall, each aesthetic was turned up to 11. They were chaotic, grating. They contributed to the atmosphere of games by giving each one a strong visual identity. And let's be real, this never stopped looking cool, and neither did this. But what happens when a game's atmosphere was built using techniques that don't exist anymore? What if that's the reason these games can never be replicated? We've seen this sort of phenomenon before. Many older games look better on CRT monitors because they soften and blend the edges between pixels. There's a similar visual illusion happening here too, something you might not have noticed in some of your favorite games. We'll find out what's going on here right after a quick word from today's sponsor. This message is sponsored by Raycon. In 3 words, their essential open earbuds are lightweight, comfortable, and affordable. Their open ear design delivers crystal clear sound and doesn't stop you from hearing what's going on around you. I use these myself, and thanks to their secure rotating ear hook, I've found them perfect for activities like the gym. And it gets better. No need to worry about sweat or rainy commutes. The essential open earbud is IPX5 waterproof. I've found that across every scenario, these have been ready to go right out of the case, which naturally stores 36 hours of charge. That's multiple days worth of tunes for your workouts and workdays. Black Friday is around the corner, and Raycon audio products are up to 30% off site-wide. From everyday essentials to the latest releases, it's the perfect time to upgrade your sound or get ahead on gifting. These early deals won't last long, so shop now before they're gone. Just click the link in the description or go to buyraycon.com/extraytopen to get up to 30% off during Raycon's Black Friday and Cyber Monday sale. That's buyraycon.com/extraytopen. Anyway, all of the games I'm showing here are using the same graphical trick, or illusion, illusion. It's a method that practically vanished after the 2000s. If you haven't already guessed, the one thing they have in common is pre-rendered backgrounds. Each is handcrafted and overflowing with details, as if a painting were to come to life. But it wasn't purely an artistic choice. At the time, rendering such detailed environments in-game was out of the question. I mean, most FPS games were still hiding their low draw distance with fog, so they had to get creative to show anything but pop-ins and polygons. The solution was a blend of isometric angles and pre-cooked shadows, allowing them to create depth and scale without destroying your PC. Someone sat down and drew or modeled every thatched roof and tree trunk in this scene. It's a level of detail that easily holds up today, and it didn't last for long. By the mid-2000s, real-time rendering had finally found its footing, and the AAA scene jumped ship the second it became redundant. If you're looking for modern games with backgrounds that look anything like this, you'll only really find them amongst indie developers. Games like Pillars of Eternity. Pre-rendered backgrounds are far from the worst fatality in the AAA space though. Lately, I've seen a wave of videos pointing out how age-old features are being quietly cut under our noses. Or worse, repackaged and marketed as new developments. Kind of like how split screen became a genre of game and not just the industry standard. My favorite bonus feature these days is basic optimization. In the 2000s, they had this down to a T. Ratchet & Clank was getting 60 FPS on the PlayStation 2. That's double what Pokemon was getting 2 decades later. Yes, it's open world and almost looks better, but when you can't hit such basic benchmarks, perhaps it's time to look back and take notes. Maybe lean into the dark arts they used to use to pull it off. Get some fog in there if you have to. Or better yet, focus on crafting smaller, denser environments, not empty pixelated expanses. Looking closer at gameplay is even more confusing. It's like as long as the graphics are marginally better, nothing else matters. Problem is, this quest to make games look as realistic as possible is at the cost of features that make them feel alive. Like dynamic destruction. When was the last time you crashed a car and the hood crumpled up or the bumper went flying? It's insane to me that this level of detail is just as novel today as it was in the 2000s. Compare Battlefield Bad Company 2 to Battlefield 6. Sure, the latter looks better, but the way buildings collapse and crumble in Bad Company holds up a little too well. It doesn't feel like a 15-year difference. Even coding AI is somehow a Herculean task for modern studios. How can any AAA title ship with enemies that don't seek cover or pathfind properly? When the Flood first appeared in Halo CE, they weren't scary because each tentacle was rendered in 4K. It was because they were inescapable. They'd traverse walls, doorways, and even dead bodies to get to you. Simply walking behind an object or leaving the area didn't guarantee survival. This isn't the industry standard, and it takes the edge off a lot of encounters in, say, horror games. Who cares how terrifying someone looks if they're traversally challenged? Keep in mind, I'm not suggesting these features were always implemented seamlessly in the 2000s. That isn't the point. The point is, they were there. They were ambitious. The industry felt more exciting because every year we got new mechanics, ideas, possibilities. Our only mistake was thinking they'd stick around. So far, we've covered style, atmosphere, and lost features. However, we still haven't covered the most unhinged part of 2000s games: the advertising. And I'm not just talking about the bizarre brand deals and campaigns of the 2000s. After all, promotion begins when you first lay eyes on a game. Developers have a single rectangle to sell you the world, and they don't make them like they used to. When I think of iconic box art, almost every example that jumps to mind is from the 2000s. The Halo trilogy, Kingdom Hearts, the Xbox and PlayStation 2 had legendary lineups. Just look at the distressed fonts and visuals of the Silent Hill games. They create this ominous vibe that perfectly captures the experience of playing them. Designers were obsessed with dark blues, chrome, and edgy typography. Of course, we still get some clean box art, but it doesn't have the same raw energy as it used to. It also doesn't matter as much anymore. When was the last time you went to an EB Games with a gift card and bought a physical copy? The marketplace used to be shelves. Cover art needed to compete for your attention. If something was placed next to Halo 2, it was practically invisible. Today, however, everything's digital and box art is much less likely to sway your purchase. What can still influence it is brand deals. Now, I dug through the 2000s and found what I believe to be the strangest and most legendary partnerships in gaming history. At number 5, we have EverQuest x Pizza Hut. And this was a genuinely groundbreaking idea. Typing /pizza in chat would open up a web portal where you could order one for real. Honestly, I'm surprised we don't see this more often. It seems like a no-brainer, but to my knowledge, games haven't done something like this for a long time. Number 4 4 is one of many bangers from Burger King. Yes, this did drop in '99, but I have to mention the gold Pokemon cards. They came with a certificate of authenticity and did have a thin layer of gold plating. Coming in third is a Halo 3 two-piece. Literally. Legend has it, less than 100 of these pinstriped suits were awarded to employees who sold the most pre-orders. I don't know if it counts as a tie-in though, so I'm also giving third place to the Halo 3 Pontiac. Its whereabouts and even existence are somewhat dubious, but there's enough evidence to suggest it's probably out there. If you have any idea where this ended up, please reach out to me on Instagram. Either way, number 2 has to be the one and only Nike Bionicles. Technically not a gaming collab, but there were Bionicle games at the time, so it's here anyway. While there are a couple floating around on eBay, I can almost guarantee they'd disintegrate after minutes of wear. And that's why first place is a tie between the Halo 3 Burger King Cup and Mountain Dew. Combining these would be like drinking from the Holy Grail. Each sip would grant you another day in 2007. You know what else used to be peak? Collector's editions. You couldn't get away with just slapping together some digital bonuses. We got night vision goggles, helmets. Black Ops had a prestige edition that came with a working RCXD. It only had about 50% of the original's functionality, but come on. Studios really understood their fan base. They knew what people wanted. Comparatively, many modern collector's editions don't even bother including a physical copy. Why make a nice steelbook case if it holds nothing but a code and memories of simpler times? In the 2000s, all of these elements fused together to create the perfect blend of marketing herbs and spices. The ads, collaborations, collector's editions. Their targeted and chaotic energy helped make game launches feel like events. You don't have to believe me, just go check out what midnight releases used to look like. The only game I could see getting close is GTA 6. With that being said, I reckon I've found the last ingredient. When talking about why older games looked and felt cooler, there's one subject I rarely see people discuss. It's not surprising because it has nothing to do with graphics, gameplay, music, or pricing. In fact, a lot of people watching this might not remember it at all. You see, the internet has significantly changed how we experience video games. We know all about them years before they're even announced. Lore is explained in hour-long iceberg videos, and there's Easter egg guides on day one. This is all well and good, but it made me realize how much mystery games used to have. There was certain knowledge that you could only get from magazines, forums, or word of mouth. And in my opinion, there was a lot of value in that. There's something to be said about the importance of not knowing how to do something or even how to feel about it. Any puzzle or minor frustration now can be solved in 30 seconds by a YouTube short. You aren't encouraged to explore and figure stuff out yourself. Things are pretty black and white now too, particularly when discussing the quality of a new release. You'll see two sides immediately form and dominate public opinion. Large commentary channels pick up on this and get out a 10-minute video called "The blank situation is crazy," or "blank is never coming back from this." It's a green light for everyone who hasn't bought the game to start roasting anyone that has. Then there's the opposite end of the spectrum with people vehemently defending billion-dollar companies. I guess what I'm trying to say is we've lost that middle ground, that space between knowing everything and knowing nothing. It was a pretty cool place to be because it also allowed rumors and legends to exist. Stuff like Mew under the truck, or Luigi in Mario 64. They weren't as easily disproven because you didn't have YouTubers and data miners constantly combing through files for evidence. My favorite was always the San Andreas Bigfoot. There were hundreds of videos of alleged sightings, for the most part being nothing more than a couple pixels and the X-Files theme. Surprisingly, a bunch of people still swear by its existence. I found like 20 different people while researching that claim to have either seen, killed, or been killed by the San An Sasquatch. If you've had a similar experience in a game before and encountered something unexplainable, drop a comment or share it in the Discord. Joining, subscribing, it's all completely free. Anyway, the only thing better than fan theories were the mysteries left by developers themselves. Easter eggs that took years to crack or remain unsolved. One of the most legendary and longest running are the glyphs in Halo 3 ODST. First discovered by accident, players noticed a series of recurring symbols scattered across the city. Many were invisible under normal conditions, only appearing when activating your visor. This wasn't just pattern recognition and rumors though. The devs confirmed their significance on multiple occasions, hinting at a deeper story. What followed was a decade-long hunt that has only recently slowed down. I won't say much more than that, but Rocket Sloth's coverage is really interesting. Whatever the case, it's clear that gaming has changed a lot over the past few decades, and even the past few years. I do get the sense that things have plateaued, and I think the industry knows this too. Look at how many studios are surviving off nostalgia alone. With 7 Black Ops titles, Call of Duty is almost as bad as EA Sports. Halo is looking at yet another remaster of their first game. Honestly, making the same thing 3 times might just be their most groundbreaking contribution to modern gaming. That is, if you forget about Pokemon. In fairness, there's a lot the industry could take from the past. They could spice up the advertising, commit more to their identity and atmosphere. This doesn't mean endlessly remaking the same games. It means understanding what made them work and bringing that same passion and energy to new releases. To me, it's pretty clear what made 2000s gaming legendary. Developers used hardware limitations to their advantage, investing time into crafting unique art styles and atmosphere. Advertising and aesthetics were actually targeted towards the people that played the games. And when you really tear it down to its finest parts, that's exactly why games looked cooler in the 2000s.